I'm a waiter at a hotel restaurant in Prague. Now last summer, this American guy sits down and waves me over like he's hailing a cab. He starts talking about his room service complaint. I'm nodding along because his English is fine. I understand everything. But then he stops mid-sentence, leans back and goes, "Wait, you speak English?" I told him yes. Many people here do. He looks genuinely confused and says, "But you're in Europe. I thought you guys all spoke European." I didn't know where to start with that one. Same week, different American walks in and asks if we have menus in normal language. I hand him the English version, and he flips through it, squints at words like aubergine and courgette, then looks at me dead serious and says, "No, I mean in American." Explained that British English doesn't count because it has weird words nobody uses. I told him we'd have to make do. He spent 10 minutes trying to decode what a jacket potato was, convinced it was some kind of potato-shaped coat. Then there was the woman who got upset because our Czech staff were speaking Czech to each other during their break. She complained to the manager, saying it was rude to speak foreign languages when Americans could hear them. She actually said, "What if you're talking about me?" I'd never know. The manager just stared at her, then pointed out that maybe that's exactly why people do it. I work at a train station ticket counter in Brussels, and this American couple comes up needing tickets to Paris. The husband starts speaking very slowly and very loudly in English. "Do you have trains to Paris?" I answer in normal English that yes, we do. The next one leaves in 40 minutes. He turns to his wife and says, "See, honey, if you just speak slowly enough, they can figure it out." She nods like he's discovered fire. I printed their tickets in silence while they congratulated themselves on their communication breakthrough. The husband then asked if people in Paris would understand him if he spoke slowly there too, because he'd heard French people were difficult. I told him they'd understand him just fine. What I didn't say was that they'd also definitely be mocking him. My cousin runs a pharmacy in Stockholm. She told me about this American guy who came in asking for aspirin. She pointed him to aisle 3 and he wandered off. 5 minutes later, he comes back looking irritated and says, "You guys don't label anything in English here." She explained they're labeled in Swedish because it's Sweden. He actually laughed and said, "Yeah, but who can read that? You should have English labels for tourists." Then he pulled out his phone and tried to show her pictures of aspirin bottles from home, like that would help. She kept her face completely neutral and explained how to use Google Translate. He left muttering something about how IKEA has English instructions, so why can't Swedish pharmacies figure it out? The logic was airtight in his mind. I'm a museum guide in Istanbul. And during a tour, this American lady keeps interrupting to ask why all the signs are in Turkish and English but not American. I explain that American is English, just with regional differences. She cuts me off and says no. American is a completely separate language because she can't understand British people when they talk. She then launches into this theory about how American evolved from English but became its own thing, like how dogs evolved from wolves. I'm standing there with 15 other tourists, all of whom are now staring at her. One guy from Manchester just starts laughing. She gets defensive and says everyone back home knows this. It's taught in schools. I didn't have the heart or the time to correct her, so I just said that was very interesting and moved along to the next artifact. She spent the rest of the tour loudly explaining to her husband that tour guides in Turkey don't know much about linguistics. My brother manages a currency exchange booth in Barcelona, and last month, an American comes in wanting to exchange dollars. Simple enough. But then he asks why Spanish money has a different language on it. My brother's confused, says the euro has denominations and numbers, which are universal. The guy goes, No, I mean, why does Spanish money say espaga? That's not English. My brother explained that espaga means Spain in Spanish. This guy literally argues back, but money is international. It should be an international language. My brother asks what he means by international language. The guy says English, obviously. It's what everyone speaks. It's my brother who speaks 4 languages. Just stared at him for a solid 5 seconds before pointing out that more people globally speak Mandarin than English. The American's response? Yeah, but that's in China. I'm talking about important countries. My brother exchanged his money without another word, But he told me later he'd never seen someone so confidently incorrect about so many things at once. I'm a bartender in Krakow, and this group of Americans orders beers. One guy starts chatting with me, friendly enough, asking about the local beers. I'm recommending a few. We're having a nice conversation in English. Then his friend leans over and stage whispers, "Dude, be careful. He probably doesn't actually understand you. He's just smiling and nodding." I'm right there. I heard this. I've been speaking fluent English to them for 5 minutes. But this guy is convinced I'm faking it, doing some kind of customer service pantomime. His friend then turns to me and goes, "Do you speak any English?" Super slow, super loud, pointing at himself. I told him yes, I speak English, German, Polish, and some Russian. He looks skeptical and says, "But like real English? Or just drink orders?" I asked him what exactly he thought we'd been discussing for the past 5 minutes. He had no answer for that. They left me a €2 tip on a €60 bill, which honestly tracked with the whole vibe. My sister works at a cafe in Dublin. She had this American tourist order a cappuccino. Standard order, she makes it, hands it over. The woman takes one sip and calls her back over, visibly annoyed. "This isn't right," she says. "It tastes weird." My sister asks, "What's wrong with it?" The woman explains that cappuccinos in America taste different, better, more normal. She wants to know what my sister put in it to make it taste so foreign. My sister lists the ingredients: espresso, steamed milk, foam, same as anywhere. The woman cuts her off and says, "No, in America, we make it with American coffee. This tastes like European coffee." My sister tries to explain that coffee is coffee. It's made from the same beans, maybe roasted differently. This woman is not having it. She insists that American coffee is a different plant, grows differently, and makes better cappuccinos. She actually says it's a scientific fact. My sister gave her a refund and watched her leave to find a Starbucks, where presumably the coffee would be sufficiently American. I'm a server at a sushi restaurant in Singapore, and this American guy spends 10 minutes studying the menu before calling me over. He points at the Japanese descriptions and says, "Can you translate these to English?" I explain that the English translations are right next to them. That's what the menu shows. He looks at where I'm pointing, frowns, and says, "No, I mean real English. These words don't make sense." I'm looking at the menu with him. It says things like salmon nigiri and California roll. He's stuck on the word nigiri, says he's never heard of it, therefore it can't be English. I explain it's a Japanese word that's been adopted into English, like sushi itself. He looks at me like I'm trying to scam him and says, "Sushi is American. We invented it." I don't even know where to start with that. I just told him it's raw fish on rice, and he ordered chicken teriyaki instead because at least he knew that was safe. The chicken teriyaki is also Japanese, but I wasn't about to get into it. I work the front desk at a hotel in Montreal. This American couple checks in, asking about restaurants. I suggest a few local places, all French bistros because we're in Quebec. The husband immediately says, "Do any of them have English menus?" I tell him most have both French and English. He looks relieved. Then he asks, "But do they understand American orders? Like if I want my steak medium rare, will they know what that means?" I promise him yes, steak temperatures are pretty universal. He's not convinced. He tells me that when they were in France, he ordered medium rare, and it came out wrong. So clearly French people don't understand American cooking terms. I didn't ask what came out wrong or how. I just recommended 3 places with English menus and staff who speak English fluently. As they're walking away, I hear him tell his wife that thankfully Canada is basically America, so they probably won't have language problems. They came back 2 hours later furious because everyone at the restaurant was speaking French to each other. He asked me why I didn't warn them that people in Montreal speak French. I reminded him, it's in Quebec. He said he thought that was just the name of the province, not an actual language thing. Geography wasn't his strong suit either, apparently. I'm a tour guide in Reykjavik, and I do these Northern Lights tours, where I drive people out to see them, explain the science, the mythology, all that. Last winter, I had this American guy in the group who kept asking when we'd get to the part where people spoke English. I told him everyone on the tour spoke English, including me, right now. He said no. He meant like native English speakers. I explained I'm speaking English natively fluent right now. I learned it as a child. He stops me and says, "But you're Icelandic. You can't speak English natively. That's impossible." I asked him why that would be impossible. He explains that native means from birth, and Icelandic people are born speaking Icelandic, so we can only learn English later, which makes us non-native speakers by definition. I told him many Icelandic kids grow up bilingual, learning both simultaneously. He insists that doesn't count because you can only have one native language. His proof? He only speaks English. Therefore, everyone can only speak one language from birth. I gave up trying to explain and pointed at the aurora borealis instead. He was too busy arguing about linguistics to notice the lights for a solid 10 minutes. My uncle drives a taxi in Tokyo, and he's got this story about an American passenger who got in and immediately started speaking louder and slower. Like that would help. "Take me to Shibuya Crossing." My uncle, who speaks perfectly good English, just said, "Sure, no problem." The guy visibly relaxed and said, "Oh wow, you speak English? That's so rare here." My uncle told him, "Actually, a lot of people in Tokyo speak at least some English, especially in tourist areas." The American said, "That's great," but then asked why Japanese people don't just switch to English full-time since it's easier. My uncle asked what he meant. The guy explains that learning Japanese must be hard for kids. All those characters and different writing systems, so wouldn't it be simpler if Japan just adopted English instead? My uncle pointed out that Japanese people generally don't find Japanese hard, since they grow up with it. The American said, "Sure, but objectively, English is easier, because it uses an alphabet." My uncle spent the rest of the ride in silence while this guy explained how much simpler life would be if everyone just spoke English. They got to Shibuya Crossing, the guy paid, and then asked my uncle how he learned to drive with all the signs in Japanese. My uncle just said practice. I work at a train information desk in Amsterdam, and this American couple approaches asking for help. They're trying to get to Bruges, which is in Belgium. Simple route, I start explaining the connection. The wife interrupts and asks if people in Bruges speak English. I tell her many do, especially in tourist areas, but the locals speak Dutch and French. She looks worried. She asks her husband if they should skip Bruges because of the language barrier. He says they came all this way, they should at least try. Then he turns to me and asks, if we speak really clearly and use small words, will they understand us? I tell him yes. Simplified English usually helps. He nods, satisfied, then says, "It's weird how Europeans can all understand English, but Americans can't understand European." I ask what he means by European. He says, "You know, the language you guys speak? European." I explain that Europe has dozens of languages. There's no single European language. He looks skeptical. Says his cousin told him everyone in Europe speaks European. That's how they all talk to each other. I try to clarify about the EU using translators in English as a common working language. He cuts me off and says, "Right, so European." That's what I'm saying. I printed their tickets and wished them luck in Bruges. They'd need it. I'm a flight attendant on routes between New York and various European cities. And last month I had this American passenger who got upset during boarding. She came up to me, pointed at two passengers speaking German to each other, and said, "Can you make them stop?" I asked what the problem was. She explained they were speaking another language. It was making her uncomfortable because she didn't know what they were saying. I told her politely that passengers are free to speak whatever language they want. She insisted that on an American airline, everyone should speak English so nobody feels left out. I pointed out we were flying to Munich and many passengers were German. She said that didn't matter. They were on an American plane, so American rules apply. She actually used the phrase linguistic territory and said we were in American linguistic territory until we landed. I asked her to return to her seat. She did, but she spent the whole flight glaring at anyone speaking anything other than English. When we landed in Munich, she tried to file a complaint about the German passengers being rude. The gate agent in Munich, who overheard this, just said, "Welcome to Germany," and walked away. I teach English at a language school in Seoul. And on the first day, this American exchange student shows up. He's taking Korean language classes, which is great. But during the break, he comes up to me, genuinely confused, and asks why Korean is so hard. I tell him all languages take time. It's normal to struggle at first. He says no. He means, why did Koreans make their language so complicated? Like, why didn't they just use simpler grammar and an alphabet? I explain that languages evolve naturally over centuries based on culture and history. Nobody sits down and designs them to be easy or hard. He says, yeah, but someone must have decided at some point. Like in America, we chose English because it's straightforward. Stare at him. I ask if he knows where English came from. He says America, obviously. I tell him it came from England. It evolved from Germanic languages mixed with Latin and French influences. He looks genuinely shocked. Says he thought it was invented in America because that's where everyone speaks it properly. I didn't have time to unpack all of that before class started again. But I thought about it for the rest of the day. The confidence, the absolute certainty that English was an American invention. That other languages were somehow chosen to be difficult. He wasn't being malicious, just genuinely never thought about it. That's the thing about living in a country where everyone speaks your language. You forget that languages exist because people need them, not because someone decided yours was the default.